Hey, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas. It's Saturday morning, my friend, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Hey, this is Ellen coming to you from the tropical island of St. Bart's.
Hi, this is Stan in Gainesville, and today we're discussing working for nonprofits, the most important question, cold and warm LEDs, making control choices, and our review of the 2025 Super Bowl halftime show, all on Light Talk.
And this is David coming to you from the beautiful Belmont Shores neighborhood of Long Beach, California. And if you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers
And Sister.
That's right, Ellen. Welcome, everyone, to episode 411. And I have some breaking news coming off the ticker right now.
I'm a quiver of anticipation.
We have officially passed 500,000 downloads.
I've been busy. Busy downloading.
You've been downloading 500,000 times. This is
Absolutely. It took me all night.
It's all downhill from here.
Congratulations to everybody involved. I guess we'll congratulate ourselves. I don't know. What do you guys have? Do you have any news? Is there any news out there? We just had the Grammy show. We did a show on that last week, and then we just had the Super Bowl. A very highly competitive game, by the way. And we're going to talk about the Super Bowl today during our Let's Talk About segment. But any news from the Hitherlands, from Dallas or St. Bart's or from Gainesville?
It got cold. We've pushed into 24 degrees. It was a beautiful 60s, and now it's 24. And I'm still in recruitment hell. We got 5 more days until people have to answer me on whether or not they're coming to school here.
Well, we have a lot of flu going around in Florida. And I think I'm the recipient of the gift that I didn't want.
He's suffering, but he's here anyway.
You'd have to cut me a little bit of slack today. I'm not my usual enthusiastic, jovial self.
You know, I remember when Ellen used to talk about frozen octopus in St. Bart's. Is frozen octopus in all year round? Is it always in season?
No, the frozen octopus, actually was something that someone inherited after Hurricane Irma, because this family got very sick and left. And they said to these friends of ours, you can have whatever you want that is in the freezer. And when they went to look in the freezer, assuming they were going to find vodka, they found a frozen octopus. And they didn't know what to do with it. And there was no internet or anything. So the only internet was actually up at the fire station. So they went up there and took a picture of a recipe that they found online and went back and tried to cook that octopus. And the story is probably better than the dinner, but,
So the demise of the octopus. Did they name it?
No, I don't think so. And now, there's actually a big movement not to eat octopi because they're very intelligent animals, actually. And there's a big movement afoot to save them, like saving the whales and saving the sea turtles. And in the old days, people here ate sea turtle, but now they're strictly verboten.
What about box jellyfish? Are they still on the menu?
Oh, God, no, they're awful. But my husband did have pasta with sea urchins and sea urchin eggs the other day.
Well, I think that wrapped that conversation up.
Can we move on? Let's move on to lighting. Okay, Stan has our first question. Go for it.
Okay. Mary in Wisconsin asks, in setting up a 100% automated rig, now let's assume this is a permanent installation, my console can control everything, and my architectural control system has only 1,024 addresses. How would you make your choices? Well, usually we use the architectural control devices to bring up utilitarian light, general illumination, rehearsal lighting, maybe a simple cue for like a lecture or a PowerPoint presentation, and so on. So you don't really do a very extensive setup in Paradigm or so maybe now with automation you can put automation into the architectural control processors, but they're going to eat a lot of addresses. So like, a moving light is like 45 addresses. Now, I guess you could not patch the whole light. You could just put in the pan, the tilt, the intensity, the zoom, and maybe some color, and reduce that, because you don't need gobos and all the fancy stuff for most things. We're talking about a button push or a fader for somebody who's coming in to use the room for general purposes, not a production. In the production, of course, you're using the console. So I would be very, very thoughtful. And if you wanted to put some of the moving lights in, so you could put a light on a podium, or splash a gobo on a wall, or have some overhead fixtures come up for an orchestra concert, I guess you could do that. So that's how I would go about it. If there was a situation, for example, where somebody says, we can't afford to bring a board operator in, and we want a really fancy look, for this particular award show thing or whatever, well, you can do it without going crazy on the architectural control side. You can build your cues or presets in your console, just don't turn it off, and then you can send a command from the architectural control processor using open sound control or some other method to tell the console, hey, run this cue stack or run this preset and get that look that you need. So there's other ways to skin that cat, if you will, or slice that pie. I mean, there's a reason why you have an architectural control side and you have a theatrical control side, and they should not be the same. They serve different purposes.
Carla from Cleveland asks, why are most moving heads using cold white LEDs? Why not neutral or warm white? So what do you guys think about that? Is it a transition? I mean, what color is open white? And is this sort of something that was carried over from like HMIs, or what happened here?
So everybody knows who Soji Nakamura is, and if you haven't watched the video about him, you should, who developed the blue pump LED. So using what made LEDs bright enough in the first place to use for general illumination was Nobel Prize winner Soji Nakamura's invention. So the blue pump LED, by its nature, is a certain color temperature because of the rare earths that are used in the LED itself. So it is by nature a cold light, a high color temperature. For other LEDs like red, green, and blue, they're using different rare earths. If you want to shift the color temperature of the blue pump LED, it's not at the source of the LED, it's in the lens cap. So basically, you're putting phosphors on top of that light source to shift its color temperature. And those phosphors will age. So the amount of raw light you're getting out of the raw blue pump LED at 4,500 or 5,000 Kelvin is just simply brighter than if you start to dope it, which is the term they use, and put phosphors on top of it to shift the temperature. And the problem with that is, now maybe it's getting better, they age. The phosphors age. And you're going to get shift. So that's sort of part of the equation. The other part of the equation is on the eye side. Even if you put out the same amount of lumens from a warm colored light or a cool colored light, your brain will perceive the cool colored light as brighter because you happen to have more low frequency receptors in your eye than you have red and green receptors. So when you're striving for brightness, that plays a factor.
Well, stands 2 for 2.
Wait, Steve, you had a counter argument, Steve. I heard you when we were talking about this earlier. You said, no, not necessarily about warm.
Well, I
LED.
didn't hear the caveat of a moving head. So I'm advocating for a stationary light, and I think there's some mileage there if that stationary light is a warm white or a tunable warm. And we see the comeback of gel. Because I think that has to be the biggest argument.
What argument? No one's coming back with gel.
That LED just doesn't quite have that color that you really want it to have. Doesn't mean they won't get it someday, but it's always struggled with color.
Well, when you say tunable white, does that mean that moving heads don't have a tunable?
Yeah, really. I don't understand what the difference is between a stationary fixture and a moving light.
They have tunable.
I think it's I think it's the cost going into. If I'm going to buy a moving light, then I'm going to go with the quote unquote brightness of it. But if I'm buying a fixed focus light, there's there's, I think, something to be thought of in budget. You know, how many, it goes back to Stan's question. Do I really need 500 color-changing Lecos in the air? Or do I need strategically to put 200 color-changing Lecos in the air and the other 300 are warm
Let
white?
me throw this out. Which relates to what Steve just said and back to my original question. So just imagine a small little 600 feet venue. It's going to be like an intimate space for some country music, you know, local dance companies, whatever. House lights. Put in white house lights. Somebody is suggesting, well, you should put in RGBW house lights. And I'm like, why? Is it the same cost? Well, no, they should have them. Why? Give me an example of when they're going to get used. Well, let's say they're doing a community theater play and there's a scene with police and you want to have the auditorium turn red. I'm like, now this theater is small. I've got 18 automated fixtures out front. You think for a moment you can't take one or two of them and spin them around in red and problem solved? You're going to buy a whole red house light system for that one-off time where you're going to need to do something like that? But this is how people are thinking. They got to have everything everywhere. And I'm like, no, you don't. You got to make choices.
Okay. Jay from Oxnard asks, I designed a benefit for a nonprofit and was surprised that they did not pay me or my lighting equipment supplier for our work. Now I'm $3,000 out of pocket due to these freeloaders. Should I sue them? Well, Jay, first of all, let's get us some expectations, out of the way. When you are asked to do a benefit for a nonprofit, assume that you're not getting paid. Assume that this is what we call goodwill promotion, however you want to write it off on your taxes, by the way, or maybe it's a charitable contribution, okay? So I assume that you have not asked them, there's no contract for this. You were doing this out of the goodness of your heart. Because let me tell you something, if I was a nonprofit producer and I asked you to do the lighting and I didn't say anything about fees, and you certainly didn't ask, that you're doing it for free. That's the assumption. So you're going to have to eat this, okay? I mean, the best way of handling a situation like this is if you don't want to do it for free, you ask, is there money involved in this? Is there a remuneration, whatever? And then the producer say, well, actually, no, everyone's doing this for free. And then you make a choice. You say, something, I'm going to do this for free as well. And let me tell you something, even if they paid me, I'd probably donate it right back to them if I believed in the cause. So this is something that is pretty much what happens in the industry. And your suppliers are surprised. They weren't in on this either because now they're saying, hey, Jay, where's that $3,000? Well, then you pay them the $3,000 if you didn't say it was free.
This is Jay's second question to us. I don't know if you noticed that. He's the guy a couple weeks ago who killed the mains at the end of the show without asking anyone. So, I mean, Jay's on a tear here.
I remember Jay now.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, that's the first question I always ask. I mean, particularly, when we have some mega churches in Dallas, and they call me up and say, "Can you do this, whatever?" And I always say, my day rate is X. And then they very quickly say, yes, we'll pay it. Or they will say, well, we were hoping you would do this to help us. So I don't know how you got yourself into this trouble, Jay. I really don't.
It's funny. I was watching this incredible documentary about We Are the World, the night that they recorded it. And Quincy Jones, Michael Jackson, and Lionel Richie pretty much put that whole thing together, which was amazing. I'm watching this thing with Lori because she hadn't seen it. And at the very end, they were interviewing one of the camera guys. And at the end, he says, well, at the end of the night, I kind of went up to Quincy Jones and said, so who do I give my bill to? And Quincy said, Bill, nobody's getting paid for this. I mean, how small can you feel when you say something like that? Because their whole reason for that was to feed starving children and people in Africa. And they raised so much money doing that. It is what it is. You write it off. Just write it off.
The question that was in the question, should I sue? I want to answer that one. Before you even contemplate that question, you should ask yourself these two questions. What damage has been done to me? And if you can't identify the damage that's been done to you, you're not suing, because what are you suing for? And two, how much is it going to cost me to sue? Okay? Because that's going to be a deficit on your side in the hopes that there's going to be a gain after the fact. So you got to weigh those two factors on suing. And then, David, you used a very important word in your answer to the question that I want to amplify, which is goodwill. And we just went through a thing on a project. Let's just say the architects see the situation the same way that we do, but we have to be the big boys on the block and deal with it, which we are, which means we're putting in a lot of time that's mostly wasted to satisfy somebody who's like a first-year grad student who's trying to show you how much they know. You know the type. And the architects said to me today, Stan, how much time do you have in on this? Oh, no, the term they used in our field is additional services, so they can go back and ask for more money. And I wrote back and I said, I really appreciate this, but I said, you guys have been great to work with. You've done all the right things. I have no interest in asking for any more money. Yes, one of my employees has some time in on it. I'm going to take care of them because that's what I do. I think long term, I want to work for you again. I want to work for this client again. I really don't want to ask for any additional services. And I really don't want to do that. Because I want to keep the goodwill going. And they wrote back and they said, thank you so much for that. I'm still going to look at our fees and see if we can do. I did say, if you guys want to insist later on and do something out of the goodness of your heart, sure, we'll take it. But we're not asking for it because we think long term. Our reputation is more important. The goodwill is worth more in the long term than the one little extra piece of money, right? You are listening to Light Talk with the Lumen Brothers and our wonderful sister. And this week, Light Talk is sponsored by
Evil Kitten Clothing for Stagehands. Are you tired of showing up to gigs looking like a 14-year-old punk rocker who lost a fight with a cheese grater? Is your denim more whole than fabric? Are you one poorly placed squat away from a wardrobe malfunction that no gaffer tape can fix? If you answered yes, brother, it's time for a wardrobe upgrade. Evil Kitten Clothing for Stagehands has your back and your legs with 10 pants. 10 pants built for work, not for cappuccinos. These pants aren't here to make you look trendy at Sunday brunch. They're here to take a beating and somehow still look cooler than the rest of the crew while doing it. Let's break it down. Durability. 10 pants laugh in the face of scratches, tears, and oops. Made with water-resistant, oil-finished tin cloth, these bad boys are tougher than your last marriage and way less emotional. Number 2, insulation. Winter in Chicago is no joke. Snowdrifts, frozen gear, that weird sideways Chicago wind that feels like someone's slapping you with icicles, and finally comfort. Let's talk the honest truth. 10 pants won't make it to Casual Fridays, but if you're a hard-working stagehand, oh baby, these pants are your soulmate. 10 pants don't develop desk jockey fades. Instead, they earn a badass worker's patina, frayed cuffs, stains, and grit from crawling around at monster truck shows, belly sliding and butt skating at Disney on Ice Load-In or wrestling multi-cable that hasn't been cleaned since the Bush administration. 10 pants say, I work for a living. Get out of my face. One thing's for sure, 10 pants have never heard, I'll have a pumpkin spice latte, please. No calf, 2 stevias with oat milk, extra whip. So why choose Evil Kitten clothing for stagehands? Maybe it's because every piece comes stamped with our iconic logo, Mr. Midnight, the one-eyed, cigar-smoking, feral black cat who says, yeah, I've seen some shit. It's your guarantee of authenticity. Order now and we'll throw in our distressed black and red Maine trapper's cap, complete with a washable faux fur Mr. Midnight logo. Because nothing says stagehand swag like a hat that says, I'm tough, but I also like naps. Evil Kitten clothing for stagehands, because your jeans deserve retirement, not a Viking funeral.
And now, back to Light Talk.
Well, the sound of those monkeys, iguanas, and ducks wreaking havoc in Stan and Pam's Tesla, searching for Elon Musk's phone number, means that once again it's time for Let's Talk About. And today's Let's Talk About is all about the 2025 Super Bowl halftime show starring Kendrick Lamar.
What a game. What a game. It has to be, that has to be for the record books. I could not turn it off. I could not turn it off. And then that stinking halftime show came and just, I mean, I was just in the moment until that happened. And then it took me a while to get back into the game again.
What was wrong with the game, David? Come on. The
No.
Eagles trounced
I
them.
just wanted a competitive game. I like Philly, and I like both teams. So don't get me wrong. I like both those teams. And I think Philly was fantastic. All the props to them. They were terrific. The problem is that it wasn't competitive. And it gets boring. I was at this huge party. It was one of the bigwigs of the Lakers at his house. There were TVs all over this house. There were like 150 people there. It was insane. And people there, it was like, people were like not even watching the game after a while. It was crazy.
My wife had the solution to that game. She looked at me and said, "Are you still watching that?" And I said, yes. And she said, "You know what would be really fun is to watch the Philadelphia offense play the Philadelphia defense." That would be a game.
Yeah, that would be awesome, man. Anyway, I must say that this is the first Super Bowl in a long time where I thought the halftime show was better than the game. Now, we're going to talk about this halftime show. That's why we're here, because what we saw is a very controversial halftime show featuring Kendrick Lamar, who I believe a few nights ago won like 6 or 7 Grammys. I mean, it's like crazy. Who is really a poet of our time. He's a rap artist, but he really hits a lot of the important subjects that we're dealing with and have been dealing with for many, 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 many decades and hundreds of years in a lot of respect. And I'm not going to make this some sort of political thing, but it was a different thing. And I think what was really important about this piece was that it wasn't really about entertainment. To me, it was more like theater. It was more like telling a story and doing it in a very theatrical way. I mean, everything from the set design to the lighting to the choreography to the lyrics. It was basically telling a very important story. And they had characters. You had Samuel Jackson as Black Uncle Sam, which was very interesting. There was a lot going on. And I'm just going to throw out some names first, just to give people their props. The creative directors, production designers, again, Bruce Rogers from Tribe, who's been doing this Super Bowl for, I don't know, decades and decades. Mike Carson, David Free.
There's actually one more production designer that we should list, which is PJ Lang, which is the Kendrick Lamar production designer as well.
And did PJ Lang do the those fabulous costumes?
I think, no, there's a different costume designer.
The lighting designers were Al Gurdon and Corey Fitzgerald. Corey is, I believe, Kendrick's lighting designer. And we all know that Al is a fantastic designer. He's done several Super Bowls now. Lighting directors, Ben Green, Harry Forster, Eric Marchwinski, and please, if I apologize if I get these names wrong. The lighting director programmers, Eric Marchwinski and Mark Humphrey. So I'm sorry if I left out any designers or other production people. For a complete list, you could find them at Live Design Online. Check that out. So let's talk about the production. It was basically a giant Squid Games PlayStation game on the field. And it was very interesting. when they had all the X's and the triangles and all that stuff going on in light, they also had this large area that was covering the field, which sort of to me looked like a prison yard. And it's all white, which I really liked. And all the lighting was extremely white. It was very, very in your face, very low angles, very theatrical. And I'm sure everybody was saying, boy, David must really like this because all these angles are low. It was nice to see that in the Super Bowl for a change, to tell you the truth. I felt it was highly effective. What do y'all think?
I really enjoyed the strobes when the strobes fired off. And I was trying to see where they were really coming from because they had to be some seriously powerful pieces of equipment.
I don't think they were strobes. I think they just used the movers to do it, to strobe that.
The movers could have done that. I mean, I was looking at your list. There's both the 3600 profile in there and the 4000 beam wash. So they certainly are capable.
What about those TMB Solaris flares? Aren't they kind of stroby?
I thought those were the ones that were just etching out the areas of the stage. And again, if you look at the photographs, you'll see them. They're edging out all the platforms and also that entire yard area where they had the street lights and all that. But no, they had plenty of lights to do strobing. And they were powerful. I mean, these a lot of those Vera lights.
They've got all these ETC Zeos.
Oh, what the Zeos did. They were halfway up on the second level of the stadium. And those were the lights that were doing those incredible chases at the beginning behind Kendrick Lamar, which I absolutely loved. I mean, they were really awesome because just the way that chase was designed, it was like this sort of, it would trail out. It wasn't just a regular chase. It was a trailing chase, sort of like a comet. And it did really interesting stuff with the music. And they also had those light carts at the two ends on the end zone side, filled with fixtures and some fans. It was really, really effective.
Yeah, the stage itself is pretty ambitious. There were some stats online that say 35 carts, 20 trucks, 314 wheels, 4,225 feet of staging, 10,000 square feet of scenic vinyl wrap, 1,340 feet of RGB plus tunable white LED product, 431 field crew, and 15,408 plus man hours for CAD and other stuff.
And you're forgetting one thing, Ellen.
What?
75,000 Pixmob bracelets. So that's pretty awesome, too.
And
right.
And since you were a naysayer earlier, those street lights that you like so much,
right?
What color light was coming out of them?
Well, there were LEDs and it was warm. By the way.
Warm.
But
yes.
That could have been mixed warm. I actually looked at that really closely, and you can see there were several LED elements in those fixtures. So I think they mixed that color. And as Samuel Jackson moved up to them and they all left, it started to turn a little cooler. I actually looked at that today because I was pretty fascinated because that was the first time in the entire number where it got a little warm. And I found that an interesting design choice because it was very cold. That was a very cold, steely atmosphere. Then he went over to that one section that it sort of had like the fake football grass on it with the yard markers. That platform was surrounded by a plexiglass wall. And then he had red lights that were shooting through the wall and actually backlighting the people outside the wall while the interior of the wall was still cold. And I thought that was a very interesting look. I mean, a lot of these ideas are stealable ideas. I'm telling you, they're very theatrical.
One thing that's really interesting this year is that usually the artist's lighting designer has some input, but not a shared credit. And this year, Al Gurdon and Corey Fitzgerald really seem to have worked together hand in hand. And I haven't had a chance to speak to either one of them yet, but it really does seem like a fabulously combined effort that worked well.
Absolutely.
And the same thing on the production design with Bruce Rogers and Tribe working with Mike Carson from the PJ Lang, Kendrick Lamar camp, and really working on this together aesthetically and design-wise. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree. Again, it just feels to me that it is really a cohesive design with a very strong point of view that is supported through the lighting, stage design, and of course through the costumes and choreography. So I was kind of thrilled with it. I'd be quite frank with everybody. I am not a huge fan of rap. I'm just not. I'm more of a classic rock guy. However, that being said, I really loved what he did. I loved what Kendrick did on this one because it was an important subject and it was like in your face. He did it in a classy, artistic way. And I think that that's something that must be respected and listened to. And working together, hopefully we can solve some problems.
Also, I think a lot of people who thought it was really boring and didn't get it, once they started reading those long descriptions online about what the story really was about and why Samuel L. Jackson was there and what Kendrick Lamar was trying to do, then I think they went back and watched it and really appreciated it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's hard to understand sometimes, especially the way Kendrick, way he sings sometimes, it's super fast. So I think if you had like your closed captioning on, that would have helped as well. If you could read that fast. I don't know how fast.
Right.
I didn't have it because I was at a party. I didn't have control over the video. I mean, it was, we were guests, so we couldn't say, hey, let's turn on closed captioning. But I knew I was going to watch it when I got home and I was going to watch it again. And the colors were just stunning. And it was, when I say colors, maybe 2 or 3 colors, mostly that white. And that white was just amazing, beautifully done. All right. So Steve has the last question of the day.
It comes from William in Ohio. And William writes, what is the most important question to ask at a job interview? Well, I think something that's strategic to ask, maybe not the most important question, but I think something strategic to ask is, what do you want of me? What can I do for you? How can I help you? What problem can I solve for you? To kind of get to why you're being interviewed. I think, that's much more important. The other stuff is trivial, budget, start, stop dates. But why do they want you to be their go-to designer? I don't know, Stan, what do you think? Why do people call you to be their go-to architect?
We learned something really important. We learned that a lot of clients don't really know exactly what they need. They're trying to figure that out. They know they want a project, they have a vision, but they don't really know what they need, or what we call in architecture the program. Like, what are you going to do? When you're doing a theater piece, it's this play, it's this dance, it's this musical, it's this opera. You know what the program is, the content. We often, we're going to build a theater. Okay, well, what are you going to do in it? So we got tired of that because it would waste a lot of time trying to help them figure it out. So we send a questionnaire, and we've developed that. It's about 5 pages, and we send that off to the architect or the client in advance of the first meeting. So it creates a structure for that interview process. They've had to think about the answer to those questions, and if they don't answer them, then maybe we have to help them answer the questions. So we just learned over the decades that people don't know exactly what they're going to do. But we sort of have a sense of helping them discover their own needs. And so we provide now a formal questionnaire. We get those answers back, and that creates the framework for the first meeting.
So I think we waste a lot of time in these brief interviews saying things like, what are you going to pay me? When do we start? What kind of shows do you do? I think we have a little we kind of speed date our way through an interview. What's important is you've been asked to interview. This is not, I don't think people do a lot of mercy interviews because they're busy. You've been recommended, or they know of your work, or they've seen it, or something has gotten their attention about you. So how do you get to a meaningful conversation?
Well, first of all, on the point about little information about what type of shows you do, what's your budget, what your theater's like, I would hope that a person who is that interested in a job and has gotten to this point has already visited the theater and done their homework or at least even just done research, know what type of shows they do.
Agreed.
Who's on the faculty, and know everybody who's on that faculty, especially the people who's on the search committee. For years, I interviewed people for faculty positions or staff positions, and you would not believe how few people actually were prepared for that interview. Not because they didn't really know what to say, but because they didn't do their damn research, right? And when someone comes up and says, hey, David, I know that you did this show, and I know that costume designer, or did you meet so-and-so? I mean, things like that show me that they want this job. They want this job. We once interviewed, I was on a search committee for a chair position, and there were like 3 finalists. And the other 2 I wasn't that really interested in, but this third guy came along, and he knew everything about our program. Everything about our program, what type of shows we did, what type of voice work we did. I couldn't believe it. And I asked him, I said, I must say I'm very impressed. I said, how did you find this stuff? He goes, I traveled and came here one weekend and saw your shows. Because he was interviewing us. He didn't want to go to a place where we did schlock theater. And that impresses me. So I think that's really, really important. I think what Steve said is important when he said, what can I do? How do you see me in this? Because then you turn the interview around. Because remember, they are not only interviewing you, you are interviewing them.
Right. It's not only that. Maybe it's not even a question. Maybe the most important thing is be prepared.
David's point about somebody who's researched the program or the venue or the institution, if they haven't, they shouldn't have even made it to the interview. I agree with David 100%. But I'm going to do what I think I'm getting better at, is crystallizing this. And now I'm putting myself back in a different seat than the way I answered it before, with a single question that person should ask, the most important question. Ask the people you're interviewing with, what is the thing they like most about working there? That will tell them a lot.
I agree with all of you. I think it's really important to, A, be prepared, and B, have, I think all of these questions that you're asking have to let you know whether you are going to be able to work there. Is the chemistry there? Is what's going on there?
Well, the reason I say that, it's open question. If there are things, if they hesitate to say the things they like about working there, or they can't articulate it, then you've got some red flags going up. And if they really do love working there, they're going to go on and on about how great it is or what they really like, but you got to give them that opening, but don't let them, and if they veer off into tangents, they're not really answering you. And those things are a lot about what people don't say, not what they do say.
All right. Good show, brothers and sister. I guess we'll see you all next week. Well, the rocking sounds of the Lumenoids tell us that once again you've spent another morning listening to the Brothers and Sisters of Light Talk. You can hear our show on just about every podcast site out there. Check out our website at lighttalk.org, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our podcast. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk Insanity.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast.
But with that important question, if you decide to sue us, that's what they said they were thinking about, the Snook Group with the legal team of Watson, Leitner, and Beam will defend us until our fixtures have completely faded to zero.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers and Sister, coming to you from Gainesville, Long Beach, St. Bart's, and the Lone Star State.
And be sure to join us next week when we talk about more lighting shenanigans and serve you more of our delicious casserole of nonsense.
Well, stay healthy, everybody. And this is Light Talk, broadcasting the most questionable Lumen knowledge and humor we can around the world.
So we'll see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk.
Bye-bye.